Hi guys, welcome back for another video. I'm super excited for today's video because I'm going to be sharing with you guys, in my opinion, the 5 best indoor houseplants. I used to kill all the plants I got in college. I would get plants and I would kill them immediately, and I wouldn't know what was wrong. But I feel like now that I've had these plants for a while, I've really learned what plants need and how to tell what they need based on the way that they look and how they're acting, because they really will change based on their needs. And so I'm going to share with you guys everything that I have learned in hopes that you can be successful with your houseplants as well. Before I show you guys the houseplants that I think are the best ones, I just want to go over a couple of tips that have really helped me when it comes to taking care of houseplants. So the first one is the type of pot that you need for your plants. So you kind of want one that isn't so much bigger than the actual plant and the roots that you have. So here's an example. This plant is obviously very long, but when I got it, it was in just a slightly smaller pot than this one. And so when I repotted it, I wanted it to just be a little bit bigger so the roots have room to grow. But what happens sometimes when you get a pot that is too big for your plant is that when you water it, you want to completely soak the soil. And a lot of people will tell you to water from the bottom up so you can put it in a large container with water, and then the roots will soak up the water that they need. But honestly, I just water mine from the top down and I just fully soak it. But what can happen with that is when your roots don't reach the entire pot, some of that water will stay in there and then it gets moldy and it causes this thing called root rot, and then your roots start to rot and then your plant dies. That's one thing that can happen if your pot's too big. Another thing is that, and this has happened to me, on the top of the soil, it will get this mildewy, honestly I don't even know if it was mildew or mold, but it was this film on top of gray moldy stuff, and it was gross, and it's because my pot was too big for my plant. So that's something super important to note, is you don't want to put it in a super big pot or a pot that's too small. Another thing about a pot too is you want it to have drainage holes. So for example, this is a plant and on the bottom of it there's a little hole so it can drain out the excess water. Another example is this. So it doesn't have holes on the bottom, but the excess water will come out around this edge, and then I can just kind of tip it and pour it out. So you absolutely need to have a pot with drainage holes, because that is another way that you can cause root rot, and just excess water sitting down in the bottom of it is a recipe for disaster with your plants. The second tip is just paying attention to the way that your plant looks, and that's how you'll know when to water it. Honestly, all of my plants are good on watering right now, but what happens is they will literally droop down. So specifically this one and my pothos, the leaves will just start to droop and they will look so sad. And all you need to do is just water it, and then it's crazy, the next day you'll wake up and you'll see it and they'll all be perking back up. So there's no set time, and I know there's this app called Planta, and I used it for a while to remind me when to water my plants, but it really is not a science. You just have to pay attention to what they look like, because sometimes the app Planta could tell you water it every 4 days. That might be too much water. You really need to pay attention to just what the plants are looking like. And the more time you spend, the more you have the plants and you just pay attention to them more, you'll learn them more and how they look when they're thriving and how they look when they're thirsty. So the first plant I'm going to talk about is this lemon lime ivy. It is very, very beautiful. It trails down. Really, in the wild, most ivies would probably grow up around a tree or along a log or just something on the ground. So they're not technically supposed to be just trailing down like this, but honestly it does fine, and I think it's very beautiful. It's a very beautiful look for houseplants, and this one I just love so much. It's very easy to propagate. This is in the philodendron family. And here's a propagation that I have. I don't know if you can see it super well, but there's lots of roots in there. I think propagations are a really fun gift to give people, but I love this plant. It does really well in bright, indirect lighting. And I will show you guys too where I have each plant placed in my house, because That way you can see what type of lighting it gets. And honestly, all of the spots in my house that I have plants, I do feel like they're thriving. So I'll show you guys what the lighting situation looks like. But this one loves bright indirect light. I have it on a shelf against the wall. It doesn't get any direct sunlight, but it has absolutely been thriving. I'll put a picture in here of what it looked like when I first got it, and I'll put the date too. It is just so beautiful. I love how bright it is. I feel like it adds so much color to our house, and it's just kind of like it draws your eye there too. I just love it. It's very easy to take care of, and I feel like I water it probably less than once a week. It also doesn't really need much fertilizer. I feel like it doesn't really lose leaves that much. It's just overall really easy, really happy, and it grows a lot. The next plant I want to talk about is possibly my favorite. This is my Pilea plant, also called a Chinese money plant, and it is just so cute and fun. If you guys are Harry Potter fans, my husband says that it looks like it would be in herbology class, which I totally agree with. It's just so cute and bouncy, and I love it. There's lots of different stems in this one too. You can see this one has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 stems, which is crazy. Like 8 different Chinese money like plants in here. And they all, I think, have bloomed from this original one, which is crazy. When I bought this, actually, I think it had maybe like 3 little tiny plants in there, so that's been cool to see. I guess like it loses seeds and then they just start growing. But this one I absolutely love. It's really easy to tell when this one needs water because, again, the leaves will just start drooping and it'll look like it expanded or something, but you just have to know that means it needs water. And I also add fertilizer to this one probably like once every 2 weeks. And I just started using this new fertilizer. I'll insert a picture of it here. And so TBD on if that is good or not, but you don't have to add in fertilizer. I just realized that this one was losing a lot of leaves, so I felt like all of the plants in here were taking up a lot of the nutrients, which just meant that it needed more. Don't be afraid too if your plants are losing leaves, if they turn yellow. It's really normal for that to happen, especially with this plant. Super normal for that to happen, but I just love this plant. And I probably water this one around once a week, and it also does really well in bright indirect light. But you also want to rotate it every few days because it will thrive the most where it gets the most sunlight. So we have this big window right here, and I usually have it set on our counter or even on the table. And so I'll have to rotate it because you'll start to see them kind of like leaning this way. And I just like the look better when it's more like evenly spread out. So I love my Chinese money plant. The next one is my pothos. If you're a novice with plants, the odds are you've probably heard of a pothos or seen this one. And I just love this plant because I really feel like it is probably the easiest house plant to keep alive. It's also a trailing plant, so in the wild it would grow around, you know, something like a tree. It's very ivy-like, and you can train it to grow around stuff in your house, which I love. And once it trails a little bit longer, I would love to do that with the bookcase that we have it on. But this one mostly gets kind of lower light. I mean, it's beside a window, but the sun only rises on that side, and usually we don't have the blinds open in the morning time when it is that early. So I would say like it does well in bright indirect light, but it also does well in low light. Definitely grows faster in brighter indirect light, but I'll insert a picture of what this pothos looked like when we first got it less than a year ago. And you can see it has another little trailing on this side. These are also super easy to propagate as well. And this pot too, I got this pot at TJ Maxx. It's the same as the ivy one where the excess water will come out down here. So super easy. I repotted this one, and before I put it in this pot, I had it in a smaller pot, and I feel like I watered it way more in the smaller pot than this one. But this plant is so dramatic. When it needs water, it droops down. It literally looks like it is on its deathbed, and then you water it and then it perks back up just like this the next day. But I do feel like I have been watering this one maybe like once every 2 weeks, once every 3 weeks. Like it just really hasn't needed it. I feel like that's because it does have more soil, so the water can stay in there longer and the roots are just like taking longer to soak it up. I love this plant though. It's so easy, it's so versatile. I feel like it just looks beautiful on shelving. It has like just that hanging effect, which I love. I also have a friend who has a pothos like hanging in her house, and her idea for it is just like grow down on all the sides and droop down to the ground, which I love. You can just style it so many different ways, but this is a very beautiful plant, easy to take care of, and honestly this is the #1 plant I would recommend if you are just trying to get into being a plant mom. The next plant I have is my Swiss cheese monstera plant. This is similar to the pothos because it drapes down. One of my favorite YouTubers, Allison Bickerstaff, has plant clips where she like trailed it around this mirror in her house on her wall, and I love that. And when mine gets long enough, I want to do something similar. But I love this plant. It has little holes in it, and that's why it's called Swiss cheese monstera plant. It's just so cute. I actually have it in this because this pot does not have drainage holes, and the first 2 pilea plants I got, the Chinese money plant, I had in this pot and they both died. They got that like moldy stuff on top of the soil and they died, and I realized that it was because this doesn't have drainage holes. And so I have this in here and it fits perfectly because this has drainage holes in the bottom of it, so when I water this plant I completely soak it. This one honestly though probably could benefit from a bottom watering instead, where you would just like leave it in whatever water container that it's in. But I found that it does really well with this. This honestly could probably use a lot more light, but it's in a very low indirect light spot, and honestly it's been fine. I got this in, I think it was the fall of last year. I'll insert a photo here of what it looked like when we got it and now what it looks like, but it's a very tropical plant in the monstera family, but I just love it. It's always blooming new leaves. I love seeing the new growth on it. I probably water this one similarly to how often I water the pothos, which is maybe like once every 3 weeks. I kind of just go based off of what the leaves look like. It really is doing so well, especially for the spot that it's in, and I love it. It's just so cute, and it looks so neat and different and tropical, and I just love how fun it is. The 5th and final plant is behind me. Actually I have 2 of them, but it is my monstera plant, and I just love this plant so much. I got this plant from a local nursery, and honestly I was really nervous about it because I had always wanted one of these, and they look like they just thrive in everyone's home, and I just thought like I'm not going to be able to, sorry I had to set it down because I was uncomfortable, but honestly it has been so easy to keep alive. I'm so thankful. I love the way that the monstera looks. It's very tropical, and this is an ivy plant as well, meaning that it grows along, and it basically has a front and a back, and so you'll see I think they're called aerated roots, but I can actually show you that on my Swiss cheese monstera plant. You can see the back of the plant has these little roots that are starting to form, and that's because, and you can really see it right there, that one is like reaching for the soil, and then this one, you can't see it too well, but it literally, see that has like part of its root in the soil. And so my monstera plant does the exact same thing, it's just a lot bigger. So I've actually seen people who will train the aerated roots from the back of the plant all the way up, and the monstera, the front of it grows out in the front, and it is so beautiful. So I would love to do that in this little like corner section of our house. But these thrive in very bright indirect lighting. If you have them in direct lighting, it can scorch the leaves, meaning like literally burn them. These are so beautiful. I know a lot of people will dust the leaves every once in a while, and they also love to be fully drenched when they do need watering. And this one probably does need watering soon because it looks pretty dry. And they love, like, I've seen people on TikTok who will put these in their shower, and then like that's how they'll water them, which I don't necessarily want to do that because I don't want to put like all this, get the soil in my shower. but they do love having water on their leaves. Just make sure if you do that you're not in direct sun, because that will really like scorch the leaves. The water can get really hot and then it can burn the leaves, which isn't great. But these are so beautiful. They just look so tropical. I love, love, love the way that these look. I probably water it every 3-ish weeks, but again, I just kind of go based on what it looks like. You can also get a moisture meter for the soil. It looks like a meat thermometer, and you just stick it in the soil and it'll tell you how moist or how dry it is, and based on that you can water it. So those are my top 5 recommendations for the best indoor houseplants. Let me know if you guys have any of those and what your experience has been, and if you guys have any different favorite indoor houseplants. I would love to hear, because I'm always looking to learn more about houseplants and just plants in general, because I think they're so fun and they just add so much life to your house. And so yeah, I hope that you guys enjoyed this video. Be sure to follow along for more content like this, and I will catch you guys in my next one. Bye!